certainly from the beginnings of our universe as we understand it, with perhaps the Big Bang, there was a release of various kinds of light. And as this light coursed through the expanding universe, it settled into a number of different suns that then become reservoirs for this light, in a manner of speaking. And in these suns is forged all the atoms and elements that we know of. And so animate matter, inanimate matter, all has a deep light signature in it from having been created and fused in the light of the suns. But also in this story of light, there's other particles, and there's something that we recognize as a photon that also carries light and carries infinite amount of information when you aggregate all the information that's carried by photons. And our very perception of the universe around us, and even in small spaces, whether we're sitting in a room, essentially all the information from all the objects is coursing into our eyes and reconstructing in our brains what the world around us is. And that's due again to this carrier of light that we call photons. Even if we consider,
if you want to sit here.
Okay.
Even if we consider
I have to go like put
the space around us, there's a vast amount of energy that's packed in any small bit of space.
Is this a Zoom?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, sorry, I think, yeah.
Good.
There's a vast amount of energy that's packed. Yeah. So is that, so somebody has, you may be on unmute, but we can hear you. I'm not sure who that is. Yeah. Anyway, so continuing. In any space around us, there's a vast amount of energy that comes from the sun. And this energy is at the base of photosynthesis, from which the whole nutrition of the food chain emanates. So certainly if we just consider these three facts, these scientific facts, that the atoms are forged in the light of the suns, we have the constant stream of photons that recreate in our brain the vast world around us, and the very basis of our nutrition starts from photosynthesis, which is energy from the sun, then it's clear that we wouldn't be unless this light exists. But even if we consider our present world, the current understanding of light in scientific terms, it's equated to the electromagnetic spectrum. And if we think about the electromagnetic spectrum, there's a vast range of frequencies and wavelengths, infinite frequencies and wavelengths. And many of these wavelengths have very practical applications and drive technologies that form much of our world. So from microwaves, radio waves, visible light, gamma rays, X-rays, these all have very practical applications, and without which much of the things we take for granted today in our world wouldn't be. When we project into the future, then it's been said that optics and quanta are going to be a very key part of the future, but optics and quanta are themselves derivative from light. So light in this respect is formative in not only our existence right now, but also in driving much of our current world and apparently our future world. And yet, we often take it for granted. We don't really focus or think about what light is. And so in this workshop, what we want to do over close to the next 2 hours is really take a deeper look at light. And so this workshop is going to be divided into two parts. And in the first half, what I'd like to do is go over a theory of light. And in the second half, we want to apply this theory practically. And so the way this time is going to be structured approximately is we'll have a brief round of introductions and check-in. We'll spend the rest of the first half on a theory of light that is based on the work I've been doing around cosmology of light. We'll take a brief break, and then we'll come back and we'll apply some various exercises that come from this body of cosmology of light, and then we'll end with some reflections and sharing. How does that sound good? Cool. All right, awesome, thank you. So what I'd like to do is move to brief introductions, and I'd like to hear from everyone. So your name, a little bit about who you are and what you do, and also a little bit about what your interest in light is and what you hope to get out of this workshop. Who'd like to go?
Okay, I'll go.
Oh.
Okay, I'm Kannappan Singaram, and I work as a software consultant. My interest in light is to have a very stable base and grow. That's my interest in light. And what I hope to get out of this workshop is much more deeper understanding of how to actualize what I am learning in this course. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Kannappan. And I'll come back toward what Kannappan said toward the end, because we're working together on a specific deeper dive into some of the cosmology of light. Who'd like to go next?
Yeah, I'll go next. My name is Jim Page, and I suppose most of my career, although it's somewhat eclectic, the primary last part of it was in software and hardware quality assurance. Currently retired and starting to pursue more of my lifelong hobby of photography. And in addition to having a longstanding interest in science and physics and thereby light itself, in photography, I've always been interested in light and how we perceive light and how images and the way light plays on images affects our emotions, our deeper selves. And so I've been trying to explore that in my photography so that I can not only translate to the viewer what I'm seeing and experiencing, but hopefully to evoke additional feelings and thoughts in them as they look at images.
Thank you, Jim.
I'll go next, just as easy. So I'm Margaret Faines. So my previous interdiscipline was Agni Yoga. So light and fire has always been a focus of meditative experience. And when I came to Sri Aurobindo and the Mother's Integral Yoga, there was a synthesis and awakening of the sharing of their experiences and how I could use their instruction in meditative experience. My job was teaching computer graphics for 20 years, as well as teaching meditation. And I'm retired and doing meditative graphics based on Sri Aurobindo and Mother's inspiration. So I'm sure that this workshop will be inspiring because it will connect with my experiences and my interests and allow me to do some more creative work on those themes.
Thank you, Mary.
Hi, my name is Larry Buckler. Most of you on here I've already met. Nice to meet you, Pravir. 50 years ago, I was in the ashram in Pondicherry. By the grace of the Mother, I had many experiences. A lot of those were experiences of light, actual physical light, as spirit, as essence of the universe, as many, many things. I don't understand the physics of light that much, but I certainly do understand the spiritual concepts and realities around light. And so that's my interest in your program.
Thank you, Larry.
And I'm Mary Buckler, and I'm a retired psychotherapist, and I've always been interested in light, transformation. Light is life, light is life, so yes.
Thank you, Mary. Yes, nice to hear from you.
So I can start. I'm Dolan, and my career has been mostly as a scientist, but it has the background of microbiology, genetics. So it has been more focused on biology, but I was always interested in the physics of things, and I never got to pursue that direction in the field, but I was always interested. And what I'm majorly interested in this workshop is like integrating my background, because I have always been interested in spirituality and I have a science background. So integrating that science and the spiritual aspects of light. So understanding more the physics of the light and how it is affecting us in our everyday life, the energy aspects and everything, and also knowing the deeper spiritual aspects. So that's what about your workshop interested me.
Thank you, Dolan. And where are you actually calling from?
From Canada, Calgary.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Who'd like to go next?
Hi, I can go. This is Maddie.
Yeah. Hi,
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. So I live in Florida and I have an online coaching practice where I help new and aspiring entrepreneurs essentially connect to their soul and their higher guidance so that they can have a self-guided business instead of doing more cookie cutter strategies. And I use a long background of energy healing in this work. So what interested me was I actually was feeling inspired to just learn something. And I saw this course pop up talking about light, and so much of energy healing is working with light to transform like the lower frequencies. So just open to learning from you, and yeah.
Great. Thank you, Maddie. And where did you see that course pop up? Just curious.
It was a Facebook friend. I'll have to look up his name, but I think he's a student of yours.
Okay, great. Good. Thank you. Thank you. Who'd like to go next?
This is Kanan here. Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes, you are. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, hi, Pradeep. I think we're connected on LinkedIn, and I have been, following your works for a long time. Probably read many of your books as well. Not all of your recent set of books, but the earlier ones. Mm-hmm. And so my background is that I have about last 2 decades I've been in consulting around supply chains mostly. And prior to that, I've had some hands-on experience in operations. And so the questions that you always ask yourself in consulting are the usual ones, but then the fundamental ones have always bothered me in terms of where we are and what organizations really are supposed to be beyond whatever we normally know about and what B school teaches us. And that's what basically inspired me to read a lot of what you have written earlier and also follow you on YouTube and so on. So I don't think I understand the light and some of these things very clearly.
Sure.
Definitely not. But I think the fact that I see it as a kind of a progression. If I kind of understand some of these things, I believe, to me, light is a kind of something which kind of symbolizes clarity.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding light probably puts you in a zone where you have more clarity about yourself and about your customers and so on. So that's really my motivation is to kind of try to uncover some of those dark zones and get more clarity in my life as well,
Sure.
professionally and personally.
Okay. Thank you, Kannan. Thank you for sharing.
I'll go. I'm Jackie Sussman, and I met Pravir at a company he works for. I don't know if I can mention the name or not, Pravir. Can I?
It's fine. You can.
So So it's Zappos, and I came in to do a seminar for some of the employees. I work with something called eidetic image psychology. I've had a private practice for many years, and I do a lot of work in companies. Offering programs, and my work is especially with women, and I've had a spiritual orientation for many years and more aligned with the Sufi path. So that's who I am. I'm having some difficulty because I lost technologically because I lost the part where I can see your board, so I don't even know how to get off so I can get on again. So I can, if there's something I can do, and I'm sorry to take this. Oops, there's the board.
Yeah, so if there's another Zoom icon that you see somewhere at the bottom of your screen, if you click on that, it'll probably open a couple of windows. There'll be a couple of windows, and you click on the window that has this board. That might be the easiest way.
Okay, I don't see it, but I'll struggle with it.
Okay.
And if you see me disappear,
Okay.
I'll try to get back on. So,
Okay, fine. Thank you, Jack.
Anyway.
All right. Who'd like to go next? We have a couple of more people. So, is it Christian and Peter? Would one of you like to go? So, brief introduction, your name, a little bit about who you are, and your interest in light.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I got on a little later. Hi, everybody. My name's Christian. I live out in San Diego in Encinitas. And I don't remember. I wrote it down on my calendar. Something caught my eye about this. I can't remember what it was about, but it must have been good.
Okay.
And it's fascinating to hear everybody at a high caliber. It's just beautiful. And so that's what kept me intrigued to stay on. As far as I know, I've always been aware. And I've always been in a place of wanting to connect to higher wisdom, to the knowing, and finding different modalities to take me through experiences such as Vipassana. Done many, many Vipassanas, and different medicine journeys around the world, and different facilitations of different masters out there in the world. And I'm just fascinated with techniques or tools for me to be able to help and support other people, because I do have a business that I help people called Soul Reintegration, helping people to reintegrate back in their frazzled, fractured, split self to come back home. And also teach Qigong. I've been teaching Qigong for many years. I've been doing Qigong for about 40 years, and that's been a spiritual path of keeping my flows open and connection to the divine. So yes, I'm here to have more of a download to be able to bring it to the world.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Christian. Good to have you.
Thank you.
And let's see. Peter, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name's Peter Janji. I live in Vienna, Virginia. And I've known Praveen for quite a few years. So I've been down the spiritual path for nearly as long as Praveen has. And I have done a lot of work with different modalities. Currently, I run an Ayurvedic center for health, and I have some doctors and Tibetan medicine doctors. But the spiritual path is something that I have been on for over 40 years. So, and I'm interested in what Praveen has to say. Most of his books went right over my head, so I'd like to listen to what he has to say.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Good to have you. Great. Thank you all so much for introducing yourself. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. So let me move ahead and just introduce myself and say a little bit about my background and experience. So I'm Praveen. And yes.
Sorry to interrupt you there. If everyone can also mute, that would be a lot better. Whoever is not talking, if we can mute, if you don't mind if I mention that.
Sure. Okay, great. Thank you, Kadapan. Okay, so I'm Praveen, and essentially I've been very interested in light. I'm going to speak a little bit about how this interest began and the journey that I've been on. And I also hold another hat, and that's I work at a company called Zappos. I head the organizational sciences group, and we're experimenting with different organizational development technologies, incubating them in-house, and then also going external. And I'll mention that the light processes and workshops is something that I've introduced at Zappos. I've done about 15 workshops within Zappos, and then also representing Zappos have done some light workshops in the corporate sector as well. So trying to make it as practical as possible, beyond the theory, which I'm going to introduce you to in a few minutes. And going a little deeper, so this started for me when I was a child, and I used to often have the same experience. And this would happen when I had bouts of fever. So as far as I can remember, it continued for a few years. And I think the first episode that I had was maybe when I was about 5. And when I would have fever, I would experience myself, or I would see myself inside a bubble or a drop of water. And this drop of water would move very slowly. It was like it was dropping from a tap, but its velocity would be very slow. And then inside this drop of water, I would see myself looking at another drop of water also falling even slower, and I would be inside that. And this would happen recursively. So I ended up seeing many images of myself moving slower and slower. And it was a very odd experience in that, as a result, what would happen is that I would feel like I popped out of time and space. So because of this kind of distortion of time and space, I felt like I popped out and I would enter into some realm which felt very comfortable. And I thought it was a very normal experience and that all children had it, so I never gave it two thoughts. And it wasn't until years later when I began to get into science and I studied a little bit Einstein's theory of relativity, got exposed to that, and interpreted and just got a sense that that experience I had may have been something about what he was talking about, because he speaks about how time and space are variable depending on position and depending on the velocity of movement, but the one constant is the speed of light. And so it occurred to me that maybe what was happening to me at that young age was that I was popping into some kind of experience of light. But time and space kept changing. But nonetheless, this visceral experience at a young age got me quite interested in viewing light from the perspective of mathematics. And so through the years, I've written 3 series of books. And the first series was just a non-mathematical rendering of that, something to do with that experience that I had where I was seeing myself as different images. And so I wrote this first series on fractals, which is a pattern that repeats itself on different scale. And I applied it to organizational thinking. But then more recently, I've written the second 2 series. One is the Cosmology of Flight, which is a 6-book series, which essentially articulates a mathematical expression of light. And so in a sense, I felt like there's this relationship that I have with light, and I've been trying to express that relationship in mathematical terms. So I use math as a kind of art to express what I'm experiencing or perceiving with light. And so it's been my attempt to try and capture what I call a cosmology of light, and I'll explain why I call it a cosmology of light. And then more recently, I wrote a 3rd series of books, which is Applications in Cosmology of Light. And what I was trying to do there was essentially use this light framework to perceive different current areas of research and thought that are of interest to the world. So for example, like quantum computing and genetics and artificial intelligence and transhumanism. So the last book, The Triumph of Love, is really about transhumanism. But these are all written from the point of view of a cosmology of light, and it's a mathematical exploration into these areas from the point of view of light. So, so that's something of my background and interest in light. And I'll say that we're not going to go through any mathematics here, but I'm going to use a couple of the key concepts in the cosmology of light, and that's going to be the basis of the theoretical part that we'll begin to go over in a few minutes. So before we jump into it, just summarizing, what hopefully we can achieve in this workshop is twofold. One is an introduction to the cosmology of light theory that's behind some practical light-based tools and techniques. And then in the second half, an application of some of these tools and techniques to a variety of situations. But as we use these tools and techniques, I'm going to keep drawing back or making references to this cosmology of light so that some of it can become more grounded. Now, with that, let's dive right into the theory of cosmology of light. And, what I want to suggest as we go through the next 30 minutes or so, it's for some of you, some of the concepts that I'm going to go over would perhaps be quite new and even quite contrary to what you may perceive things as. So I would just suggest, please keep your mind as calm as possible, and hopefully then the point of view that I'm bringing can have some resonance with you, and then we can discuss after that. So what am I going to propose? Here, I'm going to essentially make the proposal that everything is made up of light. And starting from the smallest realms, the quantum realms, moving through atoms at the periodic table level, through human cells, and then by extrapolation, human beings, collectivities of human beings, and even larger collectivities. I'm going to make the proposal that all of these things are made up of light. So essentially, everything is made up of light. Now, a rhetorical question, and something that also fascinated me quite a bit when I was a lot younger and as I was a science student, the very first time that I experienced this experiment, and some of you who've had a science background may have experienced this as well, but when you take something that's colorless and that apparently has no content, and you take this ray of light and you pass it through a prism, all of a sudden you see this astonishing thing of a whole range of colors popping up. And it can be very impactful because all of a sudden you have that experience that something that has no content has a lot of content in it. And the question is, what else is light made up of? Of course, scientifically, today we understand light as being the whole range of frequencies and wavelengths in the electromagnetic spectrum. But I'm going to propose that there's more to light than just that. And that's where we're going to go to now. And the way that I've approached this is basically through conducting some thought experiments where we consider the reality that might be created when light travels at different speeds. So the first hypothetical situation, I'm going to suggest here light traveling at an infinite speed. And so, we have, imagine in your mind's eye, a large globe. It can be very vast, so as vast as the Earth or the solar system or the universe, as vast as you want to make it. But in its center is a source of light, and might be a sun, it might be a group of suns. But when that thing is quote unquote turned on, then instantaneously it fills the whole volume with its light. So there's no delay. And so, what we might infer is that light has this property of presence because it becomes immediately present in this whole volume instantaneously. Now, I also want to propose that if something else, not of the nature of light, arises in this volume, it's going to be subsumed or, in a sense, overpowered by the presence of light. And so there's something that we may recognize as a property of power that exists in light and is creating this reality of this vast globe with the instantaneous light totally present in it. I also want to propose that this large volume being filled with a fabric of light that's instantaneously present in its whole volume records anything that arises or disappears in its substance or in its fabric. And so it has a complete knowledge of everything that's going on in its space. And so there's a property of knowledge that I would say emanates from this reality of light. And then similarly, all things that exist in that fabric of light exist in its substance. And so there's an immediate connection. And so I'd call that just a property of harmony. So I'm going to propose that when light travels infinitely fast, it creates a reality of something that we can term as presence, power, knowledge, and harmony. Now, let's think about a slightly different scenario. And here, imagine light projecting itself at a slower speed. So we know that in our physical universe, light travels at 186,000 miles per second. And here's a depiction of our world. So we're sitting on the Earth, and the sun is rising up on the horizon. And we know that it takes 8.5 minutes for light from the sun to reach the Earth. And that's because light has a finite speed and it has to traverse a distance. So it's taking some amount of time. Now, the thought experiment is, imagine yourself on this ray of light. So you're halfway on this journey, and 4 minutes in the past, you realize that you were at the sun. At the present moment, you realize that what's giving you the experience of the present is you're being halfway on this journey, And then as you extrapolate and you see that 4 minutes in the future, you're going to be at the Earth. So I want to propose that the concept of time, the experience of time, is emergent because of the finite speed of light. So by contrast, if light were traveling infinitely fast, then time would collapse and everything would be experienced as now. But because it's traveling at a finite speed, it gives us the experience of a past, present, and a future. And I also want to propose that matter itself arises because of this finiteness of speed. And I'll just roughly say that this is because imagine that light traveling slower is able to collect energy or collect information in something that we call packets. So it can be collected, and this creation of packets is the basis of all matter. And so I want to propose that there's 4 fundamental, regardless of how light is traveling, and here we just looked at 2 scenarios, that there's going to be 4 fundamental aspects of the experience or the reality it creates, and these 4 aspects emanate from the nature of light itself. Now, I also want to quickly draw attention to this possibility that there's a one-to-one mapping between what we call presence in the infinite speed and the past at the finite speed, between power and present in the present moment, between knowledge and the future, and between harmony and matter. And I'm going to just dig into one example, and I'm going to look at the notion of how power relates to present, just to draw a little deeper thinking here. And then I'm going to pause for a minute. So if we think about the present, in this present moment, each of us has a variety of thoughts or emotions, sensations, perceptions that might be coursing through us. But yet, what we experience in this present moment is that thing which is the most energetic or powerful will express itself and determine how we experience the present. So in that sense, I want to propose that power, the thing that's most powerful, will define the experience in the present. So that's how there's a mapping between this notion of power and the present. Similarly, if we look around this room that we're in, or any room that you're in, and you see the walls and you see the windows, the furniture, the objects on your table, all of these things are the result of a tremendous activity that's taken place in the past. So there's been a tremendous presence that's driven that activity and has created this past that we are experiencing, that's around us at any moment, because it's all been created due to this presence. So in that sense, there's a mapping between presence and past, power and present, and also knowledge and future, and harmony and matter. But the takeaway from this slide, if you will, and what's going to be the basis of our further exploration of how everything arises from light, is this notion that regardless of how light travels, we can become aware of 4 properties that are implicit in it, and that through explicitness create reality due to the way light is traveling. So I'll just pause for a brief time. If anybody has any comments, any thoughts, please feel free to bring them up.
Can you please elaborate a bit more on how you were correlating the existence of matter with the time with which light travels? I think I missed that explanation.
Yes, and I'll come to that in a little more detail in the next slide. But I just wanted you to intuitively get a sense that I'm proposing that because of its finite speed, it allows some collection of information or energy that can express itself in packets. And that's the basis of matter. But I'm going to elaborate that a little bit more.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other?
Praveet, the language, right? So, for instance, what you just said, it allows something, right? So
Yeah.
that's, I think, the where the problem is for me, right? So you're attributing consciousness to light. You're attributing some kind of you're attributing something to light which is not what we normally think of, right? When you say it allows something, or there seems to be certain decisions that light seems to be taking, basically, in terms of traveling at different speeds and doing what it is doing in those speeds. So that's the thing that I'm not able to kind of get a sense of.
That's fine. Yeah. Kanan, so this is a thought experiment. And I'm not saying it's reality, but I'm just saying that use your mind's eye to see this. And let's go further, and then we can revisit your question in a little more detail. Okay.
Thanks.
Any
So
other?
when you, so Praveer, when you mean about the presence, like how you're relating the past and the presence, it is just correlating to the experience of the present moment, or is there something greater that you want to project through this explanation of the light? Like when you're correlating presence and past, or the power and presence, I get a more deeper sense. I can get a very concrete sense of what you mentioned, but I couldn't get a very concrete sense of the presence and the past that you are saying. So is it more of the present experience that is because of the past that is happening, or is it something else?
Yeah. So what I want to draw the mapping between is that there's a presence that has driven all this activity that creates the past. You know, so you know, for instance, when we look around us, we're looking into the past. You know, everything is slightly already, any concrete object is a result of past activity. But that past activity is the result of a tremendous presence from which that activity emanates. Okay.
So it's more of that divine or the universal presence, or that energy or the Shakti that's behind the creation of that you're trying to correlate, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to
got
call it
right?
presence. Yeah, I don't know exactly if it's Shakti, but I'm just going to call it presence.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Right. Any other questions before I move forward?
Yeah, so Praveer, energy, I think, is light is a form of energy. And what you have, I think what you're doing is isolating light from the whole energy source and using that to illustrate your theory.
So what I'm saying, Peter, is that in this cosmology of light, I'm not drawing comparison to any other system of thought. What I'm saying is that in this point of view, and all I'm presenting is a point of view. This point of view is cosmology of light, and in this point of view, light is the fundamental reality, and everything else is emergent from it, including energy. So it's a point of view. It's not negating anything else, but it's what I based this whole model on. So that's what I'm going to go in a little more detail.
Okay, it's interesting. Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right, I'm going to move forward, and this will all become a little more concrete as we go into the practical examples. But a hypothetical question that I always like to ask participants, just to get a sense, is we just went through two worlds. One hypothetical world in which light is traveling infinitely fast, and it creates a reality that we somehow may understand in our mind's eye as having all presence, all power, all knowledge, and all harmony. And then there's this second world, which we apparently live in more concretely, where light travels at a finite speed, and it creates the experience of past, present, future, and matter. My question is, just a hypothetical question. Do you have a preference as to which world you would like to live in?
Pravir, I just want to live only in the world where light travels at finite speed.
Okay, Kanapa, thank you. Any other opinions, thoughts, anybody would like to share?
For me, I'm kind of divided because a part of me would want to have that harmony, light, and something, but at the same time, this beautiful experience of light being finite and therefore us experiencing the world in this time zones and everything, that's also very a learning experience.
Okay, thank you.
If there's a way to toggle, then I would be happy to experience that word and come back with it.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Kana.
I can share. I know I'm off camera, but I can share as I'm sitting here I'm looking out windows. I live in Connecticut at all the green trees, and I'm having an experience of light infusing everything. And that's a very beautiful experience at the moment. So thank you, Pravir.
Thank you, Jackie, yes. Any other thoughts, opinions? All right.
Pravir,
Yes.
this is Jim.
Yes, Jim.
I was thinking it'd be nice to have the option to move between those two worlds as we choose.
Yes. Yeah, I feel the same way, yes. Thank you, Jim.
This is Margaret. I think I'd like to pick the power in the present. Seems like a good place to be.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. All right. So, what I want to propose is that in this point of view, in the cosmology of light point of view, so the reason why I call it cosmology of light, before we go further, is that there's different kinds of worlds or realities that I'm proposing can exist when light travels at different speeds. And we just took two scenarios, one where light travels infinitely fast and it creates some kind of reality that perhaps we can imagine, and then light traveling at a finite speed creates this reality in which we live. But also, if light is projected at 0 speed, it's going to create a different kind of reality. Or if it is projected at speeds between infinity and c, it's going to create different types of reality. And this is something that I've explored in that 10-book series of Cosmology of Light, is essentially proposing that light traveling at different speeds creates different realities that all interpenetrate and impact our physical reality in concrete ways. And really that's what the Cosmology of Light framing is about, is seeing this experience physically as being interpenetrated by different dynamics that live in these different worlds created as lights traveling at different speeds. So really, with this question of which world would you like to live in, what I'd like to propose from the Cosmology of Light point of view is that the nature of light is one. And if there's a way to contact light, if there's a way to enter into the nature of light, then we have access to the different dynamics and the different aspects of the realities that exist however light travels. So that may not be something that we feel, or we may have to work towards achieving that, but that really is what the proposal here is, that it's possible through contacting or being one with the nature of light to experience a range of dynamics. And sometimes some of us, may, when we meditate or introspect or even spontaneously, feel something, a joy or a bliss that transcends our normal human experience, or we may experience lights in different ways, or, there's an infinity of experience. And from this point of view, I just want to propose that infinity of experience is, in a sense, due to our being able to live at these various realms simultaneously because its nature is one. And once we experience that oneness, or we've contacted that oneness in ourselves, we have access to a range of different experiences. Now, before, this notion of materialization or the forming of matter, I wanted to offer my point of view, again, based on a cosmology of light. I'll say that the quantum is really, it's a mechanism in a cosmology of light that collects and materializes information in light. So, for instance, if we imagine light traveling infinitely fast and creating some reality that has infinite amount of information in it, due to this all presence, all power, all knowledge, and all harmony, and then we imagine this world that we apparently live in, where light's traveling at a finite speed, I want to propose that quanta is a bridge mechanism that actually takes infinite potentiality and begins to materialize it here in this physical realm. And in the cosmology of light point of view, all uniqueness that we encounter, and uniqueness is everywhere, no two people are the same, no two thumbprints, no two snowflakes, no two leaves, nothing is ever the same. And that derives from this infinite potentiality that crystallizes due to quantum mechanism into something that we materially experience here in this realm. So this is the concept of a quanta in a cosmology of light. And for the scientists on this call, and even some common depictions, there's a couple of common depictions of quanta where you have a quantum particle materializing in this upper picture here, but it's a result of a whole possibility and energy that exists behind the material realm. Or even in this second image over here, you have various simultaneous information fields or energy fields that materialize as quanta or quantum particles materially. And so this is some correlation that I just want to draw. And essentially, in a cosmology of light, what I'm proposing is that light is at the basis of all materialization. So here's a common depiction of the atom. And in this depiction, we have a collection of different quantum particles. So you see the central nucleus, which has protons and neutrons that themselves are made from different quantum particles. And then you have electrons that are an instance of a quantum particle. And so the idea here is that light is at the basis, and then the information or possibility in light is materializing as quantum particles and creating our very basis of matter through atoms. But I'm going to get more concrete about this. So I'm going to come back to our hypothesis or my proposal that everything's made up of light. And so starting from the basis over here, where we have this depiction of light materializing as quantum particles, I want to draw attention to this more concrete classification of quantum particles called the Standard Model. So this classification, up to this point, scientists believed there were thousands and thousands of different quantum particles that were all distinct. And then a group of scientists came up with this classification where all quantum particles are categorized into 4 categories. Now, you'll see that there are 4 streams over here emanating from this initial point of materialization. And I want to propose that these 4 streams are the 4 aspects of light, which we call presence, power, knowledge, and harmony in this point of view. And that, in fact, there's a one-to-one relationship between the different things that materialize at the quantum particle level and the aspects of light. So for example, this is color-coded. And if you look at the purple over here, that represents quarks. And quarks, I want to propose, is a materialization of light's aspect of knowledge. So why do I say that? So if, for instance, we know that there are a known 108 elements in the universe, and each of these has a different atomic number that specifies exactly how that element is going to behave. Because if an atom has an atomic number of 47, for example, then it's identified as this element called silver. And silver has a very precise behavior and a knowledge associated with it, and its way of being in the universe is entirely defined by what its atomic number is. And if we ask, though, what atomic number is specified by, it's the number of protons inside the nucleus. And if we ask what constitutes the protons, then it's a collection of quarks. So at this point of view, I want to just propose that quarks is a materialization of light's aspect of knowledge. Now, similarly, if we think about the red, and I'm not going to go through all four of these categories in the interest of time, but if we think about the red, that's this category called bosons. All quantum particles require interaction with bosons in order to create minute collectivities. So, for example, the nucleus inside an atom can combine because of the action of a particular kind of boson that allows quantum particles to connect. Similarly, all the different interactions that occur between quantum particles occur because of this thing called boson. So I want to propose that boson is light's aspect of harmony materializing as the boson category of quantum particles. Similarly, the green is lepton and the yellow is the Higgs boson. But I'm going to move forward to just make this more concrete with a couple of more examples. So when we move up a level of complexity to atoms in the universe, and we know that atoms are, of course, entirely made from quantum particles, but it's interesting that the most common classification of atoms is in the periodic table is there's a fourfold classification, which we know as the S shell category, D shell category, P shell category, and F shell category. And I want to propose that light's aspect of power is materializing in the S class or S category of atoms. Why do I say that? Because, for instance, if we look at some of the S class atoms, some representative atoms are those of hydrogen and helium. But hydrogen and helium, we know, cause nuclear fusion in most of the stars that exist in our universe. And so all this vast amount of power and energy is created due to nuclear fusion happening between hydrogen or hydrogen and helium, or helium and helium, for instance. So all the power and energy is kind of emanating from there. So I just want to propose that the S shell is really is a materialization of light's aspect of power. Similarly, the D shell is a materialization of light's property or aspect of presence. So just to draw a quick example, in the world around us, the D shell elements are things like aluminum, copper, iron, nickel, cobalt. These are industrial elements that create heavy structures around us and create kind of a presence. So, whether it's transportation or buildings or anything that endures, it's these kinds of atoms that constitute toward their formation. So I want to propose that it's a materialization of light's aspect or presence. Similarly, P, well, I'm not going to go into it in the interest of time, but the P shell is a materialization of light's aspect of knowledge. And the F shell, which contains the largest atoms, and therefore is an experiment in harmony and collectivity at the atomic level, is a materialization of light's aspect of harmony. Now, something that's much more concrete to us, and I'm going to just pause for a minute after this, is our understanding of any kind of cell. Whether it's an animal cell or a plant cell or a human cell, there's 4 molecular plans in any kind of cell. And these molecular plans are identified or known as lipids, proteins, polysaccharides, and nucleic acids. And if we ask what each of these represent, nucleic acids, for instance, creates the DNA and genome and houses the knowledge that exists in a cell and how all of the elements of a cell are going to act. And so I want to propose that nucleic acids is a materialization of light's aspect of knowledge. Polysaccharides are the source of energy or power within a cell. They're sugars usually. And so I want to propose that polysaccharides, the second important molecular plan, is a materialization of light's aspect of power. And lipids create compartments inside a cell, so allow specialization of labor and harmony to exist in the cell. And therefore, lipids are a materialization of light's aspect of harmony. And proteins, which do all the work in the cell, so in a human cell, there are over 30,000 different proteins. These proteins are a materialization of light's aspect of presence. And so, if I were to just summarize this, this is a lot that we've been through very quickly, but emanating from light, deeply embedded in light, we may intuitively grasp that there are 4 properties which we call presence, power, knowledge, harmony. And I want to propose, in a cosmology of light, the proposal is that these 4 aspects of light materialize at more and more complex levels in physical, chemical, and biological systems, not only to organize how these systems operate, but also concretely materializing the infinity of property that exists innately inside light. So that's the proposal here. And let me just pause for a minute before I continue.
Pravir, you froze a moment ago, and so I got that lipids were harmony and protein were presence. Was it nucleic acids and polysaccharides? What are the 2 properties there?
Yeah, nucleic acids is knowledge, and polysaccharides is power.
Thank you very much.
Pravir, I wanted to clarify 2 things. Like first, when you talk about presence, what exactly you mean by that? Because in different aspects, when you are talking about that periodic table and you were talking about the D shell where the industrial elements and same as it kinds of relate to the past definition that you said that everything around us, so the industrial elements that create everything around us, that brings in a sort of presence. So I want to know about exactly what your definition of presence is. And also I'm wondering, when you talk about this modular of cell structure, the nucleic acid and the polysaccharides and everything, I'm wondering if things can be, if in your proposal or hypothesis, has there ever been thought that if this knowledge, harmony, power, and presence can be interchanged, because you depict certain roles to this nucleic acid where it is coding information like DNA, RNA, and all that. But as you correlate them with knowledge, so that they can also be correlated with other aspects of light that you mentioned, the power, harmony, and everything, because they have to all work together. So if we can think about it in a definition like the DNA, RNA have to work in synchronization and in harmony. So have you ever thought that these things could be like interchanged, and maybe each component might be representing all aspects of light, like a nucleic acid might be representing knowledge, power, harmony, everything together, same as the proteins might be representing all of that, but they're majorly projecting one aspect?
That's exactly right, Dolan. So I would say that, and that's something, we don't have, obviously the nature of this workshop is such that it's short and it's just introductory. But in fact, exactly what you say is what I propose in the vaster mathematics of light, where I've expressed your thought exactly, because there may be an essence to something that is a prime essence. So when we think about nucleic acids, I want to just say that it's a vehicle for knowledge, but nonetheless, it requires all the other aspects of light to operate to give it completeness. And that's the nature of anything. But here we're just being approximate. We're trying to get the gist of something. But no matter what we look at, there has to be a combination of all four of these. And that's the nature of the oneness of light in some sense, because these four things that are perhaps held together as one thing, or are one thing in light, when it differentiates and materializes, they always, because they are one in their essence, they seek for that oneness no matter what. So they embrace each other in their action. That's one way to think about it. But the fullness of anything that materializes has to have all four aspects in different play and combination coming together. And there's an infinity of possibility, because even when we think about knowledge, knowledge is a very vast thing, and there are many differentiations about how we can describe or think about knowledge, or harmony has many different aspects to it. And so there's each of these, if we think about it mathematically, as four large sets, knowledge, presence, power, and harmony, as being a meta set with infinite elements in it, all differentiated, that are all describing in greater detail some aspect of that prime knowledge, presence, power, and harmony. And when we come to a mathematics of things, what we're really saying is that any element that exists in material manifestation has as its seed this combination. So the uniqueness is derived from the infinity of these sets, where you may have unique combinations that bring together different aspects of these sets in a formulation that then materially is the kernel for how that thing expresses itself. But nonetheless, there's going to be other aspects that have to be prevalent for it to reach its fullness. So completely, I agree with what you said. Thank you.
And that presence, if you could clarify more on that.
Yes, so presence, one way to think, again, presence is a very approximate term we're using, and it's for the purpose of just trying to get some intuitive gist of what it is. But really presence, if we think about presence, it is an infinity of elements that relate to presence. So things like service or diligence or perseverance, all these variations of presence. And one thing, if you're open to the mother, for instance, and if you've read the four powers of the mother, and you look at descriptions of what, for example, Mahasaraswati stands for, you get a sense for what presence is. But there's an infinity of variation in that notion of presence. It's not just one thing.
Pravir, the statement.
I can't hear you too well.
Question. I'm sorry. I have a statement and a question.
Yes.
Your four qualities also translate as Sat Chit Ananda.
Yes.
And question. I've heard that the speed of light is also standing still. Can you explain, is that true? Can you explain that in other words? I don't quite get it.
Yes, I can. Yes. So it's something that I've been contemplating a lot, because this journey for me has been something that's been going on for at least a couple of decades more concretely. But the notion, I believe that light traveling at sea and our universe is an intentionality. And it's an intentionality so that it's standing still, so that everything else can manifest in its medium. So light to me is the prime medium in which all manifestation occurs. And in the books that I've written, what I explore is that every other thing that we experience, like space, time, energy, gravity, electromagnetic waves, anything that we may think of, is all emergent from this reality of light. And so it requires this arbitration of what I call quantum computation, meaning that there's an arbitration between different possibilities or layers of light which have different kind of information that materialize in this layer that we experience as physical reality. But exactly what you said, there's a stillness to this light, and it has to be still so that everything can manifest in it.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Prabir.
Yes.
I was thinking, would you say there's an analog here to the ongoing work that we see in particle physics and the continual breakdown and search for smaller and smaller aspects of matter? I'm thinking of when you mentioned the standard model there and the search for the Higgs boson most recently. It seems like there are some similarities there as well, that they keep trying to break things apart, and yet there's seemingly an infinite open-endedness to the quest.
Yes, and I think that's, so Jim, my point of view on this, and I'd be interested to hear what yours is, but my point of view is that, when we're dealing with the quantum level, then we are at, essentially it's a veil between what we experience materially and a number of different layers that exist behind it. And there's always an arbitration. There's always, there's a meta function that exists behind the physical materialization of things. But there's many different ways in which it can express itself. So for example, assume that there's something like, particular kind of beauty that wants to manifest. But, that can be translated into a play of different kinds of emergences of quantum particles that are arbitrating, what beauty means. But beauty is a very precise thing in this kind of mathematical framework. So just to summarize, what I believe is that if we continue to focus physically on something, it's always going to elude us, because the physical thing is not the whole reality. Mm-hmm. You have to take it in combination with a meta function that's trying to materialize, and therefore you have to think about what's happening physically in relation to what's trying to happen physically. And so there's always going to be variation, there's always going to be gaps, or there's going to be an infinity of experience as we try and probe just physically, because we can never get the full answer from just trying to probe physically.
Yeah, thank you.
So Pravir, that brings forward the concept of evolution and possibly a meta-evolution combined. You might express it differently.
Yes, absolutely. I think that, so one way that I would think about it is that, time is experienced differently when light travels slower. So there's a linearity in time in our experience in this physical universe, and that to me is emergent because light's traveling at a constant speed. But if you were to go into a much deeper layer of light where there's apparently no time and everything is compressed into one, then what we could say is that the evolution is a kind of like extrapolation linearly of this fullness that's expressing itself toward fullness through the experience of time.
Yeah. It certainly feels like Sri Aurobindo's vision.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Thank you.
It's been a main source of inspiration for me. So. Okay, I want to just pause for a few minutes, give everybody maybe 5 minutes, and then we can come back and then just wrap up this section and move into some different kinds of visualizations to just begin to ground some aspects of this theory.
So is this the break?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's 5 minutes.
Pravir, I'm enjoying this very much.
Are you, Jackie?
Yeah.
Cool. So glad you could make it.
Yeah, me too. It's very restful not to have the video on for me. I've never done that before, so I hope you don't mind.
No, I don't. No, not at all.
Yeah, it's good. I've never thought of light this way.
Yeah, it's a different way of thinking about it.
It feels like the universal intelligence, the way it manifests through light, the power of light, has a creative intelligence in it.
Yeah.
It impacts and organizes cells and everything.
Yeah.
It's good. What time is it? I didn't even know what time it is.
It is almost 11:30, so 2:30 your time.
Yeah. So we only have a half hour left?
Yeah. So
that's fast.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we should get started. Hopefully we have everybody else on, but I want to cover as much as we can in the second half just to ground some of this. And, I have probably more exercises than we have time to cover, so I'll have to select a few of them. But, just completing this model here, if you will, by extrapolation, since cells are the basis of tissue and tissue the base of organ and organ is the basis of any individual system in the body, whether it's the endocrine or respiratory or circulatory or nervous system. So just by extrapolation, I want to propose that light is intimately present in the entire body. And by extrapolation, I want to propose that any collectivity of human beings is also a play of light and a materialization of information and light. And then also, as we look at it at larger and larger level, much larger collectivities forming civilizations are also a materialization of the infinity of information and light. And here we just looked at it physically, but I'll also mention that it's possible to view these things functionally. And what do I mean by functional? I mean that for instance, when you look at any individuality, there's a precise, in a particular way of seeing, there's a precise mathematical function that forms uniqueness of an individual. And that mathematical function is derived from these four large sets, which have infinite elements. And so, as we experience this uniqueness in larger and larger organizational frameworks, so even getting to the level of countries or regions of the world, in this point of view, there is a particular mathematical formulation that derives from the aspects of light that give us insight into the uniqueness that's being expressed materially. And so that materialization is nothing else but the infinity of light materializing in those organizational frameworks. So, we have another half an hour. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to compress this 30 minutes into about 20 minutes to give us 10 minutes to wrap up, because I would like to just summarize for a few minutes and then get any impressions that people may have had. So with that, I'm going to take us fairly quickly through some exercises, but the way I'm going to do it is that I'm going to share the exercise and then I'm going to ask us to do the exercise for a brief minute and then share back, if we want to, what our experience was. So my first exercise is simply this. So in your mind's eye, when you imagine light, what do you experience? So take a minute and in your mind's eye, just imagine light. What do you experience? Okay. Call us back. And if anybody would like to share, would love to hear how you imagine light.
Emanating radiance.
Cool. Thank you, Maria.
For me, I'd say unlimited expanse.
Thank you, Jay.
For me, it's moving particles.
Thank you, Jackie.
It's a total darkness.
Okay. Thank you, Kanika.
Awareness.
Awareness. Thank you, Kanika.
For me, it was glow and beauty. And then another thing crossed my mind that is it my mental association that I have always associated light with glow and beauty because of my readings? And is there something that I'm missing about it? Is there something that I'm projecting onto it? And is there something that I'm missing about it?
Anybody else before I move on? Okay. Here's the second exercise I'd like you to do. And here, if you please just focus on this little sphere or globe of light. And in your mind's eye, what I'd like you to do is, and forget about all physical laws here, but just play with this globe of light in whichever way you want. So in your mind's eye, you're playing with this globe of light. Just take a minute. Okay. Would anybody like to share how they experienced or what happened when they played with this light?
What I did was to kind of stretch it, all around me, and then the vision was me traveling in that light bubble at infinite speed. So then it's just the light bubble, and that's pretty much it.
Cool. Thank you, Kanal.
This notion of stillness and leaving it where it is, and then at the same time just so touch and feel it.
Okay.
For me, it was initially just a static two-dimensional space, and then almost instantly I was thinking, but it's an opening, and it's an opening I can move through. And as soon as I did that, then I was, oh, wait a minute, am I looking back through that, or am I still on the other side? So it was, which side of the opening am I on now, and how would I distinguish?
Thank you, James.
So I had duplicates first expanding and contracting, and then multiples pulsing. So it would, and then that seemed to go into limitless particles.
Thank you, Maybe.
I dissolved into it, in the oneness of it, where it was just clear. It was just in the nothingness. It was just being. It just became one.
Thank you, Krishna.
I felt pulsations in my body, and then it went into operating with all the cells in my body, the light, and then I realized it was connected to the heartbeat, and then I felt my heart.
Thank you, Jackie. Anybody else? All right. So one of the things I want to propose before we move forward is that we, within us, we have different ways of perception. And when if we use our physical eyes to look at this, we perceive it a certain way. But equally real is if we use our mind's eye. And then I want to propose that when in fact we use our mind's eye, that depending on how focused we might be or how intent with our concentration, that we actually connect with something other than the physical aspects of things. And even when we imagine things in our mind's eye, it can have a physical effect on us. And so that's going to be something that I want us to focus on in a couple of exercises, and I'm going to go there. But the thing of how focusing on something in our mind's eye can impact physical circumstance. And we can experience it just as simply as a difference in bodily sensations or a warmth or something due to the power of imagination. I'm going to walk us through a guided visualization here, but I want you to take a look at this yellow rose. And now with your mind's eye, so you can keep your eyes open or closed, but in your mind's eye, I want you to see a vast sea or expanse of light. So you're seeing this vast expanse of light in front of you, and it's brilliant, blinding light. And you go closer to it, and as you go closer, you begin to observe a lot of activity going on within this light. So there's subtle movement of light itself within this light. And as you observe, some of this subtle movement settles into a form and creates a little quantum particle. And now you observe other such quantum particles emerging from this fabric of light, and then grouping together and forming an atom. And so you're seeing that this atom is entirely made from light, it's coming from light. And now it's grouping together with other atoms to create molecules. And those molecules are grouping together to create a cell. And so you're seeing around you a large number of cells that are just emerging from the substance of light. Now you notice that this particular pattern of cells is creating a tissue that's materializing as this green stem. So you're seeing emerge in the sea of light a green stem, and it's completely flooded with light. Light moves in and out. It's entirely made from light. And now as you look up the stem, you're seeing some green leaves emerge. And as you look further up, you begin to see yellow petals materializing in the sea of light. So there are more and more petals materializing. And now you see this yellow rose has formed in your mind's eye within this sea of light. So just notice how it interrelates with the light around it, how light is flowing through it. and notice how it may make you feel as well. All right, I'm going to ask you to come back. How was that for you? Would anybody like to share?
Two words come to mind basically. One is transparency,
Mm-hmm.
and second thing is a sense of being hacked.
Sorry, the second thing is what?
A sense of being hacked, basically. HACKED, hacked. I mean, hacked from within. Sense.
Aha, I see. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, a very calm, secure experience it is actually.
Okay, thank you, Kanapan.
So go ahead, Mary.
I saw and experienced it mathematically for the first time.
Thank you. What was that like?
She's muted.
It was incredibly beautiful. How it all just fit so perfectly together and emerged so perfectly. It was beautiful.
Thank you for sharing, Mary.
I felt incredible peace.
I felt connection and presence. And there was this sense of certainly of oneness in many, and how this was a slice, but repeatable. So there was joy.
Yeah, and I felt a sense of almost childlike delight and wonder.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
For me, initially, it was as though the light is emanating from the rose. And then when you took me to the atoms and all, and then when you started talking about the plant tissue, it started kind of feeling like everything is made of light, like even the human tissue and everything. So it kind of felt like an all-embracing thing where everything that we see in the world has that component of light, like every living thing as well as non-living thing.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, one of the interesting things that I just want to say is that, you know, it's all the photons that come into our eyes and come into our brains that reconstructs this whole experience that we have, or our perception of the world around us. It's all happening within our brains and our neural nets, if you will. But similarly, when we use the power of the mind's eye, who's to say that that experience is not less real, but we just may be seeing it in something, in a different realm, if you will. But I just want to propose that. I'm going to go to another guided visualization in the interest of time, because I want to wrap this up in about 5 minutes. And here I'm going to ask you also to experience this in your mind's eye, but I'm going to walk you through it. And this is, by the way, this is a practical exercise that I have been experimenting with in several of the companies that I do work with. And I always ask people to approach this very experimentally, so scientifically. So what I'm going to guide you through, you apply it to one kind of situation and then don't apply it to a similar situation that also might be occurring, and see for yourself how these two situations might evolve differently through time. So yeah, I'd like you to think about some practical situation, something that's affecting you in some way. It could be personal or it could be work related. So in your mind's eye, just repicture that situation. It could be just a problem you're working on, or it could be an interaction with somebody, it could be a group thing, whatever is affecting you in some way. Just see that in your mind's eye. Clearly create that circumstance in your mind's eye. Experience the feelings that you feel in that situation. Now, I would like you to put that aside for a minute and focus inside your hearts. So go deep inside your heart and see there a globe of light. So you enter into this globe of light, and I would like you to feel the texture of the light, its temperature, its color. Experience it fully. You're inside that light, in the light in your heart. And now, from within that globe, you're inside there, you're pushing the boundaries of that sphere to make it larger and larger. So this light from your heart is growing and it's occupying more and more of your body. And you make the sphere larger than your being, so you're sitting inside it. And now fully experience this light that's flowing and flooding your body and your being. And how you're of one substance with it. Now, please invite the situation that was affecting you in some way into your personal globe of light. There's no expectation of outcome. All you want to do is flood this situation with light in your light sphere. So you're allowing light to penetrate and go deep into the situation. And the situation is completely opening to this light in your light sphere. So now you experience yourself, the situation, all in your personal light sphere. And you're allowing light to just flow freely through everything. Just experience that for about 15 or 20 seconds. All right. You can come on back. And anybody would like to share how that was for you, please feel free.
So what there was a bit of the merging of the light with the circumstance. allowed me to, and letting it flow freely gave me a different perspective, as well as experiencing it being freed up. But there was a perceptual shift as well as an energetic one.
Thank you.
For me, it was a situation that needed reconciliation, and initially I couldn't allow that thing to come into that bubble of light. There was a lot of resistance that was coming up. And then when you talked about let the light come in, instead of allowing that thing within the bubble of light, that felt much more easier to slide into. And then it was a different thing, because then I could kind of pray or call to the light to give me some understanding or reconciliation of the situation, even though I don't understand it at the moment. So that was much easier for me, where I can call in for something higher to give me an understanding or a explanation for that. So that was what felt for me.
Thank you, Dawn.
My sense initially when I visualized the situation, it seemed very tangible and almost like physical objects I was trying to navigate around. And then when I went into the light in the heart and expanded that out and beyond my physical self, then I felt more like I was a constellation of light within a larger universe of light. And then when I brought that focus back to the original situation, those kind of discrete elements or obstacles became more pliable and fluid. And it was more, rather than my initial observation of how could I manipulate them and put my energy into them, it shifted to, well, open up from what's coming from outside of view, from outside of the situation. That in a sense, the answers, the resolution might arise from elsewhere rather than being a mental interior puzzle to solve.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you.
I think for me, the key moment was when you kind of push the light to beyond yourself, and when that happens, there's a bit of a spaciousness. You kind of feel that, and it also kind of tends to relax you. And then because you tend to have got, at least I have got constructed when I first imagined the stressful situation. And when this happened, the contrary happened, in the sense that you tend to relax into that spaciousness. And then when you kind of bring this event into this, then I'm not sure about resolution, but there was a feeling of ease which was there now compared to the first time.
Thank you.
For me, I saw a situation where I was leading a group of people, and all the steps you took me through, I saw the light emanating from my heart, and then I saw the people coming into that sphere of light. And then I realized, oh, I emanate light. And then I was just one with the people in the light. I was just in this light, pulsating light, and I just didn't want to come out of it. It was so good, so delicious. I didn't want to come out of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jackie. Okay. We have 5 minutes left, and I just have a couple of more things that I want to just wrap this up. I'm going to skip a couple of exercises and just very quickly go over some summary points. And if anybody needs to leave at 12, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, I would love to hear something from you about your experience, but I'll get to that in a few minutes. So, just summarizing, I want to propose that fluency in light dynamics is like a muscle that needs to be built. Many of you perhaps already have your practice of similar things. But, as with anything, the more we see things in light, the more the secrets of light will reveal themselves to us. I want to just propose that. So, cosmology of light, light is in everything, and everything arises from light. We just need to learn to perceive light differently. And here I want to draw attention to two modes in which we may perceive light. One is, of course, through the physical eyes, and the other is through the mind's eye. And I want to propose that when we perceive light from the mind's eye, depending on how we perceive it, we are actually contacting some layer in which that light exists. I also propose that creating your own light sphere will help facilitate any kind of change. And to me, that's the power of being a human being, because we're each endowed deeply with the nature of light within us. And if we cultivate that nature through visualization, then we can even practically influence physical events due to it. So any person, situation, or condition, no matter how complex, no matter how large, no matter how obscure, can be invited into your light sphere and be re-seen in light. And while we didn't have a lot of time to go into this point, but I just want to propose that light has its own logic and will change the information field of anything that's put in your light sphere. And here, I'd call you to experimentation, is just begin to see for yourself what you apply light to and what you don't, and how these things may evolve differently, from subtly the way you perceive them to even more concretely how the situation changes. And so I would say that in a cosmology of light, your power to positively influence change is limited only by your relationship with your light sphere. Now, with that, whoever would like to share, and if you have a few minutes, I would love to hear from the experience of the last couple of hours. What is one thing that you're taking away with you, or what is some impression that may be strong for you at this point in time?
Ravi, can we have that previous slide a bit for a bit longer time? I was going through that. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Oops.
I think one thing that I would definitely like to take away from this is whatever brief experience we've had of contemplating light here definitely causes a change within, and that's something that's very fascinating. I probably am less inclined to pursue the logical aspects of it, or even the mathematical aspects of it, but it's more the energy aspects of it.
Yeah.
And what it does within, and maybe that will lead to other things. I think that is probably going to be the starting point for me.
Yeah. Thank you, Kanan.
For me, that thing was very helpful. Like initially, I told about an experience, and then I said I also had a question in my mind that the way I'm perceiving light, is it because of all the readings and how I have perceived light? But then in this last takeaway, you said something that really caught me, that whatever light we perceive in our mind's eyes, through that we are entering a layer of reality. So that was very helpful for me, because that often comes to me, am I influencing something with my mind's perceptions or something, or am I going for something original? So that is a question that always comes to me. So that is a lot very helpful, like whatever I'm perceiving, instead of questioning it, like maybe I'm entering a reality of that.
So the presentation and the experiences or the exercises, for me, they had the ability to seed my intuition and change perception. That sounds like, well, changing perception, but there's kind of a vastness about that. It has a cascading effect. So, it's your presentation and exercises allow a different breaking apart and coming together of the concepts, especially of light and its infinite possibilities. So it's just, it's hard to put it into words, but I'm grateful for the way that you put it into words that generate experience.
Yeah. Thank you, Margaret.
And for me, the first thing that came through my mind was it's been very thought-provoking and stimulating. But then I was thinking, well, but it's thought-provoking, but how can I be open to moving beyond thought and be open to whatever that means?
Yeah. Thank you, Jim.
The biggest takeaway for me is this aspect of practicing it and make it like a muscle memory.
Yeah.
And I think this aspect of this forgetting this, right? That's quite common in the common life, where I think that would be my biggest takeaway, to remember and stay in touch with light. I mean, we stay in touch with a number of things. I don't know they are all useful or not, but I think staying in touch with light is going to be fairly useful. Thank you. Thank you, Praveer.
Thank you, Kalapan.
Say so.
I'll take it.
Okay. Yeah. I would.
I also wanted to add, like from your presentation, what it felt was like through words and through formations of matter, you took us something beyond matter and beyond words. So that's how your presentation felt to me. Like even though you used a limited form, you used that limited form to take us to something unlimited. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For me, this was a wonderful presentation, and there's so many things to focus on. It really was helpful for me. Just, it's all light. I can just focus on one thing and everything else comes from that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. Well, thank you all so much for joining, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And if you'd like a recording of this, just either send me an email or put your hand up right now, and Okay, cool. All right.
And I know Kanapan also wanted
Up
it.
and wanted. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
So I don't know your email. We have been contacting through Eventbrite. So
Uh-huh.
is that can
No,
we have?
So, yeah, my email is Pravir, P-R-A, maybe I'll put in the chat just a minute here, but it's Pravir. Oh, hold on, I'll put it in the chat, it'll be easier.
So is the P capital?
No, it doesn't matter, but yeah, just you can put all lowercase, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks very much.
Oh,
Pravir.
Pravir,
Thanks
thank
a
you
lot for
so much.
joining.
And I don't know how you plan to keep in touch with people that have taken this, if you're going to offer more, but obviously we'd love to be
Okay,
on the list of staying in touch.
yeah,
this way.
thank you, Margaret.
Thanks a lot,
Okay,
Praveen.
thank you.
Great experience.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, bye-bye. Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
Have a good
everyone.
weekend and stay safe. Thank you.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you, Pravir.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.